run for their pregnancy center. And Rick and his wife, Karen, were actually the parents who first helped us with our daughter, who has trisomy 18, because their daughter Bella has trisomy 18. And really, literally, if not for Rick helping and his advice, our daughter wouldn't be alive.
George syndrome.
And so I had the opportunity to introduce Rick at this event without him knowing I was going to do it. And told a 2-minute story of what happened and kind of our story as quickly as I could. And then introduced him and had the place crying. And he was sitting there on his, leaning over, he wouldn't look at me. And as soon as I finished my last line, he goes, "Okay, that's not even fair." And he gets up and he does a great thing. And Rebecca comes up to me at the end of it. And she says, and I knew her through politics, we had known each other. And she walks up to me and she says, "You need to start telling your story." And I looked at her, I don't know if you remember this, Rebecca. I looked at her and I said, "Rebecca, I'm in radio, it's where God's put me, this is what I'm doing." I said, I don't want to do that. And I said, besides, nobody's interested to hear what I have to say. And she was unrelenting at pressing me to start sharing our story. And I'm pretty sure it was you who eventually then, once I agreed, she wanted us to go on the website, her website. So I thought I'd get her off my back by going onto the website. And what I didn't realize is that once she got us on the website listed as speakers, my wife and I, that for her that meant she could promote us. I didn't catch that until later. And she got I think it was Midland, Right to Life of Michigan, got us to speak. And we shared our story and got this rousing ovation. And then I found out, after getting to know more and more people in the pro-life movement, getting more and more involved in it, that none of them knew what was going on with these disabled kids. Had no clue. I'm like, if they don't know what's happening, then nobody knows. I mean, this is what they do for a living, right? And so it changed me to get me to where now I wanted to start doing it. And so I just had to share that because it's Rebecca. I'm telling, I don't know if there's another person in this country that has gotten more people to tell their stories than Rebecca Kiessling and sharing and changing people's hearts and minds. So we're gonna have a little fun though, all right? So Rebecca, she's an attorney, a mother. She's an international pro-life speaker. Many of you have probably heard her tell her story, but she also is a stand-up comedian. Now this I actually didn't know. She began stand-up comedy before ever becoming a pro-life speaker. So for years she's incorporated her, humor and comedy stuff into her pro-life speeches. But in the last 2 years, Rebecca has started performing again, doing some comedy. So she's been at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle in Royal Oak. And she has done several open mics in Hollywood and with women's events. So we're going to enjoy her tonight, and I just want to introduce you my friend Rebecca Kiessling.
Thanks so much. It's so great to be here. Oh my gosh, you guys all look so amazing. I love all the hats, and some of you really went all out, which I totally appreciate. And our organizers did such a great job with the event, right? All the food, everything's themed. I mean, this really is fun for the roses. Just like being at the Kentucky Derby, except we're just missing a few things. The smell of horse manure, and dirt flying up in the air, and the sound of horses clapping. Although in these shoes, I probably sound like I'm clapping a little bit. How many of you ladies went to look for heels to wear and you realized you can't wear them anymore? I got rid of about half of my heels because I couldn't walk in them. I remember 5 years old trying on mom's heels, and you're really clopping, just trying to stay on your feet. I went to my daughter's graduations, and you see these 17, 18-year-old girls, and they're starting to get the hang of it, but they're not quite there yet. But at some point, as young ladies, we finally learn how to walk in heels and actually look nice, right? And then you turn 50, and you got arch problems and bunions and ankles and knee issues and hips and back, and now I'm back to looking like I'm 5 in mom's shoes. I love being able to get dressed up like this. It's just so much fun for me. But I don't get how this became a thing, getting dressed up like this for horses. I mean, do you think they know what's going on? Like, you think they care? Like, they're looking over there, oh, look at that. Like, they don't care. But when is the only other time that you see all these women dressed up like this? I mean, there's 170,000 in the grandstands at the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that's insane. And when's the only other time where we see like masses of women dressed up in these spectacular hats? It's at a royal wedding, right? In the UK. How did horses get in on this deal? Like, they get the royal treatment? I mean, these aren't even the best of the best horses. I read that the Kentucky Derby horses are 3-year-olds. I mean, basically, we're getting dressed up to celebrate watching a nursery school race. And I thought about it, the only other time we watch anyone running around a track is our kids' high school track meets, right? We don't dress up like this for them. But maybe we should. Maybe we should start a trend, and let's all go out to the next track meet, and we'll come dressed just like this. And all right, your kids might not talk to you again until they're well into their adulthood. But just call out, honey, mommy loves you more than horses. Well, I race around in dirt, and nobody dresses up like this to cheer me on. Okay, to clarify, I race gravel bikes. And a gravel race is when you ride your bike as fast as you can on dirt roads. And there's nobody out there dressed up, and if they were, they'd probably get splattered with mud. But when I first started cycling, it was as therapy for me, like a few years ago, for my mental and physical health. And I bought my first real bike, but it came with a really thin, very hard, very uncomfortable seat. And I wanted to have a big, fluffy, cushy seat that's nice and wide, like normal. But my cycling friend said, oh, no. You can't ride with that. People will make fun of you. And they said, what you need to do is you wear these cycling shorts, which are like bicycle shorts with big, thick padding in back and underneath. And basically what they did is they took that cushy bicycle seat and they shoved it up into these bicycle shorts. And I don't get it. How is it that by riding with a cushy seat, I'm going to get made fun of, but wearing these cycling shorts that make me look like I have a big baboon butt, I'm not going to be made fun of? How many of you, who knows what babies and cyclists have in common? They both wear bibs. Now, I had never heard of this until I started cycling just a few years ago. And when my cycling friends told me that I needed to get a bib for racing, I said, look, okay, I know I'm going to be, cycling real hard, but I assure you, I'm not going to be drooling. And even if I did, it's not going to be enough where I'm going to need a bib. And they said, no. A bib in cycling are like the bicycle shorts with straps going over your shoulders. A one piece, think of like a wrestling singlet, but baboon butt included. Okay, so I got the bib for my race, and here's what it's like when you go to a gravel bike race. First of all, there's the smell of the local horse farm. Oh no, wait, that's the lineup of porta-johns. And you have to get there early to check in and get your number on your bike and everything. And this is a 2 to 3 hour race, so it's gonna be a while. And if you need to go, this is the only window of opportunity, and you are going to have to use the porta-johns. So you get in there, and something that I never knew before because I never needed it, porta-johns don't have hooks inside. And I've got this one piece on, and I have my cycling jersey on top. So I had to unzip my cycling jersey, hang it over my arm, or grasp it in my hand, and then make sure that it's doubled over because I don't want it inadvertently touching the wet floor. And now I got to figure out how to get these straps off this one-piece bib. And then I realize, uh-oh, if I pull these down now, it's gonna dip in. The place you don't even want to look at. So now I got to figure out how to drape that over my arm with my cycling jersey, and then you have to be able to grab the paper. It's a good thing that cyclists have very strong quads, because there was a lot of hovering going on. All right, so once you survive the porta-john, that's the first test. Then you go and you line up at the starting line with hundreds of racers. And then once they start the race and you get moving, now your task is to identify your people amongst the hundreds of riders. You have to somehow find the people who ride at the exact same pace that you're going to ride for the next 2 to 3 hours. And then once you find them, you want to be able to draft off of them. And the advantage of drafting is that it helps shelter the wind. You get a little bit of break where you don't have to ride as hard for a bit. But when you draft, you have to have your front wheel about 3 inches behind their rear wheel. But you don't want to be looking down at the wheel the whole time because, you'd hurt your neck, right? So what you do is you have to stare at their butt. And then they find someone else, and they get behind someone, and they stare at their butt. And then that person's staring at someone else's butt, and then someone else's butt. It's the whole lineup of people staring at each other's butts. And occasionally, you have to take your turn and go to the front, and you have to lead the pack and give someone else a chance to stare at your butt. And that's all it is. It's just 2 hours of just staring at butts. And if you see someone's face, you're going the wrong way. So last week I had a race, and in Grass Lake, Michigan, and it rained. It rained hard. And so I wasn't just staring at butts, I was staring at muddy butts with a big line of mud right up their back. And that mud isn't just going up and hitting them in their rear end, it's hitting me in my face. And I've got cycling glasses on that come down to my cheek so I don't get mud in my eye. But I'm getting mud in my mouth. Because, I want to be able to breathe. It's not like you can, ride with your mouth closed, like you would never make it, right? And then I'm getting mud in my nose. And I realize, okay, I have a neck gaiter on. I'll pull up my neck gaiter. But all that did was fog up my glasses, which I already couldn't see out of. It's not like your glasses have wipers, and they're just completely covered in mud, so I had to pull it back down, and I had no choice. And so the whole time I'm riding for 2 hours, and I'm just and then halfway through, I realized that I now had chunks of gravel in my teeth, crunching my teeth. And now I'm trying to grab my water bottle. I know. It doesn't sound very glamorous, but there are women who pay an awful lot of money to get that kind of mud facial. See? So, as I said, I started cycling as therapy, and I decided I would do some triathlons. That's kind of how I started. And I did my first duathlon, and then I did a triathlon 3 years ago, and then a week later, Memorial Weekend, I had a friend who invited me out on my first gravel ride. I'd never done that before, and I didn't realize that corners are where loose gravel hangs out. And it was just like that, and just pain. And I ended up in the hospital, had to have surgery. I broke my clavicle in 5 pieces. I have a bracket and 7 screws. So as I'm in the hospital, I'm posting photos on social media in my Facebook groups for cyclists and for triathletes, and telling my friends what happened, and I'm going to be out for a while. And I had pictures of my x-ray. One of the groups I'm in for triathletes, there's like over 50,000 in that group. Hundreds of comments. Not sympathy. Hundreds of comments where 4 out of 5 of them were people posting the photos of their broken clavicle and their x-rays, saying, "You've passed the initiation, welcome to the club." And I thought, what kind of club did I join? I mean, that's not in your profile pic for this group. Like, these people are crazy. Like, who would do that? That's just absolutely insane. And I bought my first gravel bike right out of the hospital. That's my therapy. So, as you heard, I'm an attorney, and I wanted to be an attorney since I was about 10 years old. Whenever my dad would try to punish me or make me do chores, I would always walk him through it and make my case, and he'd say, "Oh, you're good, you should be a lawyer." And he had gone to law school and dropped out 3 times. And so as a growing up in high school, I remember in my community, women would ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd tell them I want to be an attorney. And I remember them saying to me, "Oh, like a feminist?" I asked, "Well, what's a feminist?" And they said, "Oh, it's a woman who fights for women's rights, or for women to be strong." And I thought, well, I'm an athlete, I lift weights, like I'm really strong, and I like helping people who are victimized, helping weaker people. I'm like, sure, like a feminist. And then I started hearing that like allegedly feminists support abortion, and I thought, this really makes no sense to me. That's not helping, those who are weaker. That's being a bully. And you hear them say, oh, how can you expect a woman to have to carry a baby? And, I grew up with those Angelique commercials.
I think it just died.
Okay. I grew up with those Angelique commercials, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, right? The idea that you can have it all, you can do it all if you're a woman. You can have a family and go to school and have a career and have children. But this whole sort of like alleged feminist mentality is that you can't. And you hear them talk about babies like you have to be afraid of a baby. Like whatever happened to I am woman, hear me roar? And now you got to be afraid of a baby? I tell you what, if you're afraid of a baby, then maybe you just don't go out of the house at all. But I get it. I know how scary babies are. They have those sharp teeth, and they make all those loud noises, and they just suck the life out of you. And, oh, wait, no. That's abortion. Well, I ended up becoming a family law attorney because of some difficult experiences that I went through. And I always said I would never do that, but that's what I became. As a young attorney, I had really long blonde hair. Like I could sit on it, and it was like super light blonde. And people wouldn't believe that I was an attorney. And I'd say, no, really, like I passed the bar. And they'd say, you passed the bar? It's right over there in the corner. You want me to get you on mint julep? And as a young adult, so many of my friends were getting married. I was going to tons of weddings and bridal showers. And at the bridal shower, sitting at the table, and of course people ask the usual questions. Oh, how do you know the bride? Oh, where are you from? Oh, what do you do for work? And I told them I'm a family law attorney. And then just silence. And I realized that being a divorce attorney at a bridal shower is kind of like being Dr. Jack Kevorkian at Grandma's 100th birthday party. Everybody's just trying to keep him away from the guest of honor. I see the way they look at me, like, what do they think I'm going to do? I'm going to slip my business card and my wedding gift? Call me when the honeymoon's over. Like, I'm not doing that. Well, the hardest part about being an attorney isn't, dealing with the stress that the clients are going through, and it's not even dealing with the other attorneys who so often are really unscrupulous. It's the stress of dealing with the judges who are so intimidating. You go into a courtroom and it's like going before the great Oz. Who dares to enter my courtroom? And there they are, up above, seated at their bench, which really looks more like a throne. And they've got their robe on and they're looking down upon everyone else, just lording it over them all. And it's got to get to them after a while. I mean, all day long, it's nothing but, good morning, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court? Your Honor, may I approach? And then no matter how horrible their ruling is, no matter how cruel they were to your clients or how much they chastised you for not filing it right, no matter what they do, how they treat you, at the end you have to say, thank you, Your Honor. What kind of sadistic stuff is that? And I think it would be very difficult to be married to a judge. I mean, imagine being in bed at night. Honey, do you think we can cuddle before we go to sleep? Your request has been untimely filed. It's been made in an untimely manner. You're going to have to resubmit. Bring it up in a week, and I'll take it under consideration. But objection overruled. Thank you, Your Honor. Is it sarcasm? You are out of order. If you really cared about order around the house, you know, you'd help pick up. I hold you in contempt. Yes, I've known that for the last 10 years. I think that would be a tough one. There's no judges in the room here tonight, are there? I've spoken at a lot of right to life events where there are judges in the room, and I don't want them writing me up with the state bar, you know. Well, I was adopted, and people often ask me how old I was when I first found out I was adopted, and I explained that I was so young that I really didn't understand the concept. I thought it was sort of like the notion of the stork. Like, my parents called up God and placed an order for me. And then there was this room full of babies, and they picked me up. And so I thought I was adopted instead of being born. And that you were as old as you were adopted. Well, I have a brother who's a year and a half older than me who used to beat me up all the time. And so I cried to my parents, why didn't you adopt me first? So I could be older than him and I could then beat him up. I remember in early elementary, we saw a video on childbirth and development, and I recall thinking, I don't really need to pay attention to this. This doesn't apply to me. But then, of course, at some point, I realized, like, okay, I had been in someone's womb. I had a birth mother, and I would like to meet her. Well, that family that I was raised in was Jewish. I went to 5 years of Hebrew school, 3 days a week. I was bat mitzvahed and everything. My parents promised me that if I went to all this Hebrew school, I'd be able to have a big party, which was hardly worth all those years. But whenever we would go to synagogue, which we would do for the high holidays, you know, my parents were kind of like the people who only go to church for Christmas and Easter, you know, so they were like the Jewish priesters. And going to synagogue, it's not like church where you voluntarily tithe 10%. You pay to pray in the Jewish synagogue. So you can get your season tickets, buy a membership, and you get to be in the big sanctuary. Or, like my parents and my extended family, you get tickets for the high holidays. And it was a sold-out show, and so like all the other families, all the other people, they would go all in on it together, and we'd take turns going in. We'd have like 4 seats, and it'd be an all-day thing. And we'd take turns, and so it was kind of boring. We weren't allowed to eat. I mean, as a Jewish kid, like, we didn't have a lot of great holidays. The only fun holiday for me was Halloween. That's why I like to dress up. I mean, we had Hanukkah with some backstory about trying to drive the swine out of the temple that the Gentiles had brought in. And we had Passover, where you had to eat unleavened bread for a week. Yeah, try going to the bathroom with that. And then you have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where God decides whether he's going to write you into the book of life that year. And I was totally afraid that if I had even a little crumb of food, God would smite me and I would not get written into the book of life. And so I would invite some of my Christian friends to hang out with me all day at the synagogue because I didn't have much to do. So I finally had a friend who invited me to church. Francesca Frescieri invited me with her family to a Latin Mass at Duns Scotus in Southfield, which is like a friary, and it was on Palm Sunday. And I didn't know anything about Christianity. I mean, I knew that in Christianity you have this like all-knowing, omniscient figure who knows if you've been good or bad. He's a gift giver from the sky, and he wears red, right? Big white beard. And then there's this tree with snow and ornaments right next to palm trees, and there's this baby that looks to be in a very uncomfortable cradle. And then these barn animals, and then there's like elves, and there's the North Pole, and then at Easter there's like this bunny, like giant life-size bunny who gives out chocolate eggs, and there's this man that's like on a cross, and I couldn't imagine how all of that fit together. I mean, I just thought this must be one weird religion. So we go into Duns Scotus, and I see these men up top with brown robes and hoods, and I ask my friend, "Who are they?" And she said, "They're monks. They've taken the vow of silence." And I thought, wow, that's really creepy. Just like in the movies. And then at some point in time, everybody stands up and they all line up, and I look and I ask her, they're giving everybody something, and I ask, what's that? And she says, it's kind of like crackers and juice. And I thought, oh, this is so cool. We go to synagogue and we can't even eat all day. They're giving out food. I'm like, I'm hungry, so I stood up. And my friend says to me, and with her family, "Oh, no, you can't have any." I asked, well, why not? And she said, it's because you're Jewish. And I thought, oh, it's true. Everything I learned from my Jewish family growing up, they really do hate the Jews. They won't even let me have crackers and juice. And then, of course, I had seen all the movies and sung all the songs about how Santa went to all the houses of all the good little boys and girls around the world, but Santa didn't come to my house. And I asked my parents, why not? And my dad explained it to me. Santa's an anti-Semite. I mean, go figure, Santa Claus and his sidekick Rudolph. Like, this is all making sense now. But I just really believe that he didn't come to my house because we didn't have a Christmas tree. So I thought, all I need to do is just get a Christmas tree. And I tried to tell my dad that, we could decorate it in blue. And we could call it a Hanukkah bush. And my dad said, there are 3 things that Jews don't do. Number 1, Jews don't have Christmas trees. And by the way, my dad was a Jewish atheist. Okay, but this was his identity. Jews don't have Christmas trees. Jews don't eat pork. And Jews don't marry a goy. which is a derogatory Yiddish term for Gentile. And, you know, I'm thinking, you adopted me, you know, clearly a shiksa. Now, you brought me in the house. What does that say? Well, my mother loved pork. Like, my dad would not allow pork in the house, but whenever we left, she would have bacon and ham and any kind of pork she could have. And I fully realized that that was her passive-aggressive way of cheating on my dad. But he would not allow pork in the house, and I said to him, Dad, you know those magazines that you sneak in the house? Pretty sure that's not kosher. You're bringing pork in the house. And I would not be surprised if he didn't keep honey-baked ham catalog under his pillow. So I thought, all right, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a letter to Santa. And so I wrote, like I was sending correspondence across enemy lines. I'll just speak up. Dear Santa, I've been very good, and I know you know it. Double check your list. Look, I'm trying to get a Christmas tree, but if you could just wrap the gifts in blue and put them underneath the potted houseplant. Look, my mom only makes mando bread cookies. I'm sorry, I can't get you any chocolate chip. And please, make sure you don't smell like pork. Well, like good Jewish parents, growing up, my parents would take us to the bank, go over our accounts and show us the interest that had accrued. Well, my brother had a much, much bigger bank account than I ever had, like exponentially larger. And I asked my parents about this, and they explained that it was because my brother had a bris. Okay, well, I want to have a bris too. And they said, oh, no, you can't. You see, a bris is when all of the family and friends go to the synagogue and they all watch the baby boy get circumcised. And I said, well, I want to be circumcised. And they said, no, you can't. What? That's not fair. Look, circumcision is when they remove skin from a baby boy's privates. Oh, okay. Well, I don't understand why all the family has to be there, but I have skin. Like, how much do you need? And my parents said, no, you can't be circumcised. And I started to cry. It's not fair. I want to be a boy. I want to be circumcised. And my mother, Gail, she began to freak out. Oy vey, Larry. Oh, little girl wants to become a boy. She wants to have a sex change. I'm like, what? No, I just want the bank account. Well, I finally attended my first bris when my cousin had a son. And so we all went to the synagogue, and there we all were as the audience. And they put the baby boy up on the altar, like they're preparing to have him sacrificed. My cousin and her husband were standing up there, and there was the moil. Think of a rabbi with a knife. This is not done in a hospital, so there's no anesthesia. So what he does is he wraps a stick with some rags or some gauze, and he dips it in wine, and then he shoves it in the baby's face to hopefully get the baby inebriated enough so he doesn't feel the pain. Well, he felt it. And you couldn't see the cutting, but you didn't have to, because the look of horror on my cousin's face was enough for me to realize my brother didn't have enough in his bank account. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story before we close. I learned at 18 that I was conceived and raped. And at 19, I met my birth mother and learned all of the horrible details. And she had actually gone to 2 illegal abortions, and I was almost aborted. But the 1931 law in Michigan protected me, saved my life, and today my birth mother and I are both thankful that we were both protected. I'll just share a couple of things So I'll just share a couple of the things that people will say to me. I've had people say on college campuses especially, so what you're saying is that if you had been aborted, you wouldn't be here today and you wouldn't know the difference anyway. So what does it matter? And I would explain to them that that same logic would justify me killing you today because you wouldn't be here tomorrow and you wouldn't know the difference anyway, so what does it matter? Logic. And I've had them raise their hand during Q&A and say, I just want to say that I have no problem looking you in the eyes and saying to you that I think that your mother should have been able to abort you, and I fully understand that that would mean that you'd be dead right now. And yeah, I just want to say I have no problem doing that. And this is out of their care for women, that they would say such a thing to a woman like me. Like, do you feel love? I'm not feeling it. And they always talk about how much they care about women. But I'm a woman, I tell them, what good is my right to anything as a woman if I don't have my right to life? And then another thing that you always hear, and Gretchen Whitmer says this, they call the child of a rapist. The child of a rapist. I'm the child of a rape victim, first and foremost, and I'm a child of God. But a child of a rapist. Gretchen, are you saying that rapists should have parental rights? Sure sounds like it. You're saying that child belongs to him? Really? After everything she's been through? Gotta change that language and call people out whenever we hear that. And then they'll say, demon seed, evil seed, Satan spawn, devil's child. But look, here, I'll take this off for a second. But look, see? No horns. And no tail. But that's the way that they treat my people group. Well, my birth mother, several years ago on my birthday, she called to wish me happy birthday and to let me know that my grandmother had passed away. I was born on her wedding anniversary, and she passed away years later. And we had both been to see her just a couple weeks before, and she wasn't looking up or talking, and not only did I get her to look up, but I got her to laugh because I sang to her. And if you heard me sing, you would laugh too. Not good. And as we were about to hang up, my birth mother called out, Rebecca, I just want to say, I'm so glad I had you, which of course was the best birthday gift ever. And I'm so blessed to hear people regularly say things to me like, oh, Rebecca, I'm so glad you were born. I get to hear those kind of words all the time. Not from my kids, mind you, but from strangers all over the country. And I realize how special that is when people share their stories with me, or when it's someone's birthday, or even on Facebook if it's their birthday. I make a point of saying to people, I'm so glad you were born. And I've had so many say to me, wow, thank you so much. No one's ever said that to me before. People need to hear that. Bring joy, speak words of value into other people's lives, and join me in making a point of letting other people know I'm so glad you were born. Thanks so much.